Hey everyone, StripedSweater here. Hope you've all been doing wonderful and having a good time playing Chivalry. As many of you know, the very first Chivalry patch dropped yesterday afternoon. It included a bunch of bug fixes and gameplay changes and improvements, and we went over them on stream, but I feel like, and some people have asked me that they want a more in-depth video with regards to some of the combat changes that have taken place since the patch, so I figured I'd make a YouTube video of it just to give you guys an idea of what has actually changed with patch. So yeah, let's dive into it. Throwable damage reduced and windups made slightly slower. It's pretty self-explanatory. Throwable weapons across the board, anything that you throw has been nerfed. There are damage reductions, and the windup to your throws are a little bit slower. I didn't note, it wasn't like super noticeable or anything, like not super game changing. It really is just slightly slower. There's nothing much else to that. But the damage change is key for certain weapons, especially, and I'm sorry to say it, my Danax boys, rest in peace. Your Danax does no longer do 90 damage, which means it does no longer one-shot archers upon hitting them. It really blows because I know we all like chucking Danaxes at archers, making them feel the wrath of the Danax. But yeah, that is no longer a thing, and it's just across the board throw damage. I think I tested it with a shield, and shield throw I believe was 35 before, and now it's only 30. Okay, next on our list here is the sprint attack damage is reduced, and it says especially for slashing weapons. So your sprint attacks, Vanguard charges, I don't think I got a chance to really test it on Footman, but definitely on Vanguard it was noticeable. We tried a Danax sprint attack, greatsword sprint attack, and I can tell you off the top of my head that pre-patch the sprint attack for the greatsword was 110 damage. Now it's only 100 damage. I did try it with the war club. Other blunt weapons, it didn't seem to affect them too much, so that should be okay. Like I said, mainly just for any weapon that can cleave or slash. Next on the list is the sledgehammer, was made slightly faster. Not the biggest change. I tried the sledgehammer. It is a little bit faster, but it's nothing like super game breaking. Like it's not sword speed, right? It's just a little bit faster. This note here, my shovel mains, I was really worried about this. It said shovel deals a little less damage, and I was worried and concerned, but after trying the shovel, I believe it went from doing 105 to a night, and now it does 97. So, and obviously its slashing and stab damage has been adjusted accordingly. I don't know if this actually affects its hits to kill, but when it comes to your standard heavy overhead into heavy overhead on a night, they are still dead in 2 hits. All right, next on the list here, Messer stab damage reduced. This was actually noticeable. I think it is doing less damage. Now, I don't know if this is the nerf we needed for the Messer stab. I do think the Messer did do too much damage on the stab. It was doing like, what, 50 with a normal stab or 55 with a normal stab, and then it was like 65, 70 or something with a heavy stab. It was pretty insane. Now it's doing 40 with a regular stab, and then it's doing, I think it is 55 with a heavy stab. A little bit more of a nerf. It's not so devastating anymore, but as I said, I don't think this is the nerf we needed for the Messer. For me, the Messer always seemed, and other weapons, the Messer and the longsword actually both suffer from this. The Messer more so, I think. It seems to actually hit before the animation plays out. There's video, you can literally, you'll see me stab someone, and it's like I'm hitting them while the weapon's all the way pulled back. It hasn't even lunged forward yet. What really should have been nerfed is its speed to maybe match the animation a little bit better. Okay, reduce players' ability to significantly backwards drag before a swing. So this is one of the first things I noticed when I jumped on the game after the patch dropped. I started my swing, and I'm just swinging in the air, and you can already notice that trying to maneuver your weapon as you're in your wind-up phase, it's actually a little more strict. It's a little tighter. Really notice it on the longsword. On the longsword, I really noticed it, and one of my viewers brought up that they thought the longsword received a stealth speed nerf. It's not the longsword that was nerfed speed-wise. It was the fact that you can't move your weapon around after you swing it as easily as before. This one here, the active, riposte, and counter durations now continue for remaining duration if the attack is feinted or transitions to heavy attack. This is probably the biggest combat change in this patch, and it's a pretty significant one. So pre-patch, when you counter riposte, right, you were basically, after you riposted or after you countered, you were essentially immune. You had active parry, you had iframes that would block any incoming swings for about half a second. So let's say you're in a 1v2, right? One guy swings at me, I counter off of him. As I'm countering, the other guy's swing the other guy had already started a swing and is now connecting with me. If it's within that half-second window of me doing my counter, his weapon will bounce off of me and I won't take any damage, right? It's great. It's a great mechanic and really helps with 1vx situations to help that one person survive a little bit easier. So that's counter and riposte pre-patch, right? Also with pre-patch, the moment you feinted that weapon, so if I were to counter and then feint it into a different swing, the moment I feinted it, even if I was in that half-second window still, even if I was in that half-second window, you wouldn't instantly lose your invincibility, essentially. So even if I feinted it really quickly and was in that half-second window, you would not block incoming swings, right? They would still hit you. Now, post-patch, your active parry and active counter, or your iframes, essentially, will still remain even if you feint the attack or turn that a counter into a heavy attack. And this is pretty big for 1vx. So now, and as far as I'm aware from what I've played, it's not actually giving you more iframes. It's not resetting your iframes the moment you hit feint or counter, but what it's allowing you to do is within that half-second window that you have your iframes, you can change the direction of your attack and counter back with a different swing while still maintaining your invincibility that you had during your initial counter. Now, why is this important? So this is important because let's say you're in, we can be in a 1v2 or in a 1v3, right? A lot of the times how it was pre-patched, you would get forced and locked into counter wars with your opponent because you couldn't change the direction of your attack, right? To mix up the other two people or even the guy that you were fighting without being punished for it, right? Because you would then start taking damage the moment you tried to change the attack direction. Pre-patch, if I got one guy, let's say he's using a sword, right? Everyone's come across sword counter spammers, right? It's a thing. These people exist, right? So he throws an LMB at me. He throws a horizontal slash at me, and I counter back with a horizontal slash of my own, right? So I have the invincibility now, but all that sword guy's doing, he's constantly mashing counter, right? So he throws an LMB, I counter with an LMB of my own. He throws another LMB, I counter with an LMB of my own, right? We're just countering back and forth. Why is this an issue? Now, it's not so noticeable in 1v1 because in 1v1, you do have time to change your attack direction and hit the opponent before he can retaliate against you. If he's locked me into a state of counter war, right? And he's got a super fast weapon that'll keep me locked in like that, and his buddy is also attacking me, the only way for me to really defend against both of them when it comes to countering is to keep on countering. Because if the moment I tried to feint and tried to break that counter, because that's the whole point of feinting during a counter or a riposte. You're trying to break that rhythm of constant counters. So the moment I try to feint, if his buddy's swinging at me, because now I feinted my attack, I lost my invincibility, he can hit me, right? And I get punished, even though I'm just trying to manage the fight. So now, post-patch, excuse me, you will be able to feint your attack and change the direction of it during a counter while maintaining your invincibility that you had for that about half second. Now, as I said, you still have to do it relatively quick because as far as I'm aware and from what I've noticed, it's not giving you any more iframes. It's not extending how long you have your active parry. All it's doing is giving you the option of within that half second window to change your attack and not be punished by losing the invincibility. So if that situation happened now and that guy's spamming LMB counters at me, I will counter back with an LMB and then I will instantly change it into either a stab or an overhead attack, right? If I change it quick enough and that guy's swing is still coming at me, let's say his second guy is still swinging at me, now the active parry will still be a thing and I will still block the attack even though I feinted the attack. Okay, next on the list here, fixed attacking queuing issues. So players will now be able to more successfully initiate a follow-up parry attack or dash. So the game has a bit of a buffering issue. I noticed it a lot, especially in the alpha and the beta, but it got better and better, and on release it was even better, but it was still an issue where it would kind of like buffer your inputs. So now it's not going to queue up or buffer your inputs as much, but we did find this introduced an issue as I was playing. So some of you might have noticed that your weapons are stopping on hit and not cleaving, whether it's a blunt weapon or a slashing weapon after you do a heavy attack or even a regular attack. So what's happening? I figured it out. I was testing it on stream. I actually figured it out. What's happening is that as you're doing your your counter, and it mainly happens after you're doing a counter, because how do you counter? You have to hold block and then you have to attack back, right? Now, when you're in a 1vx situation, what everyone was doing pre-patch, you go for your counter attempt, you swing the weapon, it cleaves through everyone. Let's say you do a heavy attack with a counter, but now you're holding block again, getting ready to counter someone again, because usually there's multiple people swinging at you, so you're getting ready for another counter. So what's happening now? So before, it would do its cleave and then it would go through everyone and then it would put your block up afterward. What's happening now, and I believe it's an issue because of this specific patch note, and this is why you're noticing your hits are stopping, is because as you're inputting your counter, you're still holding your block button, right? Because you're just waiting for the swing to finish so you can put your block back up. What's happening now is you hit someone. The moment you hit someone, because you're still holding block, instantly cancels the animation of the swing and you're instantly in a block state. It is very unnatural and feels super wrong. And this is why your blunt weapons on cleave, any weapon on cleave essentially, is stopping on hit as long as you're holding the right mouse button, right? And as I said, most notable in a 1vx situation, because as I said, you're usually countering or riposting in a 1vx, but after you're done your swing, you're holding your block button so that your guard goes up after your swing is done. So what's happening though is your swing is hitting the guy, and because you're holding block, it instantly cancels the attack and you're instantly putting your block up. So this worked, and I even tested it. I was able to cleave through 2 of 3 people, and the moment I cleave through the 2 people, I'm instantly, if I click block, the swing halts dead in its tracks. It's making it so that your heavy swings, there's really, like, you're able to essentially cancel your swing mid-swing, if you hit someone, right? It's not committed to following through, and I believe the only thing in these patch notes that makes sense is it has to do somehow with the attack. Before, it was buffering your input for your block, so it was waiting for the swing to finish, and then it was putting your block up right after your swing finished, as you're attempting the next counter or riposte. But now, because it's not queuing that block anymore, the moment you hit your opponent, your block goes up and the swing cancels. There's not even an animation. It looks so weird. So give it a try when you're in game. As you're hitting someone with a slashing weapon, or if you're cleaving someone with a heavy swing, hit the block button the moment it hits your opponent, and instantly, or even just hold heavy attack, and while you're doing that, hold block. Your swing will stop the moment it connects with the guy, and you're enter block state instantaneously. It's super unnatural. I don't think this was intended, and hopefully it gets addressed, because as I said, it's allowing you to essentially cancel your swing mid-swing, right? So just be aware of that. And if you're wondering why is my heavies not cleaving, that's why. It's because you're holding block while the heavy swing is happening. And as I said, I believe it has something to do with this patch note right here, where it's not queuing inputs anymore. Those were 2 of the biggest changes in the patch right there. So let's continue down the list here. We have kick, jab, and special cooldown is now refreshed when entering interrupting states. So essentially, sometimes you might go for a jab pre-patch. Let's say a guy's swinging at me, I go for a jab, but his swing ends up hitting me first, right? And now he's queuing up a secondary swing. Normally what you want to do when someone's comboing you like that, you want to input jab to interrupt them, right? Because after you get hit, you're supposed to be guaranteed 3 things: jab, dodge, and block. Should be guaranteed of what you're allowed to basically do to defend yourself after you get hit and try and regain initiative. But so before pre-patch, there's a guy swinging at me and I throw out a bad jab, and it doesn't end up hitting the guy because his swing hit me first. If he's starting his combo swing, I'm still in jab cooldown, and even though I'm mashing jab, it's not doing anything because there's the cooldown. Now it's essentially saying that after you get hit, or if you flinch or something with regards to kick, jab, and special, that cooldown will reset and you don't have to wait for it anymore. You can just attempt it again. So instead of now sitting there mashing jab and not doing anything, even though I see his combo swing coming at me and I'm trying to counter it with a jab of my own, in theory, when you go to jab someone again, it will jab them because you don't have the cooldown anymore. I didn't really get to test it, but that's basically what that's saying right there. All right, what else? This change, it's kind of whatever. Bandage kits no longer deal damage to teammates. Thank God. Everyone was waiting for this. It was super annoying throwing a med kit to your teammate and watching him go down, and you're like, I was just trying to do my job and heal you, and you ended up killing the guy. So that's not a thing anymore. Woohoo. Fantastic. What else? Okay, this is a big one here. This was essentially the great sword had hidden tech because of this bug. So whenever you successfully landed a kick on a greatsword player's block, there was an issue where they would kind of wiggle and their body would wiggle back and forth. And sometimes if they're up against the wall or something while you kick them, they'll actually phase out of the map for a split second and then come back in, interrupted, and would punish you essentially for kicking the guy because he disappears for half a second and you can't punish him. It was essentially a mismatch, and that's what it's saying here. Fix a bug with the greatsword parry where player collision would not match their position when their parry was broken. That's been fixed, so you shouldn't experience any more wiggles once you successfully kick a greatsword player. And it was super weird. It was only on the greatsword. It was only against other greatsword players. That's been fixed now. So no more wiggling greatsword users after you kick them. All right, what's next? Oh man, one of the other biggest changes of the patch. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Torn Banner. Thank you, Torn Banner. You freaking listen. Temporarily disable the one-handed spear to rework its animation sets and make it more readable. Thank God. As I said, since day one that I played this game and I unlocked the spear, I was saying this weapon is freaking busted. It's too hard to read, and its damage stats, just its damage and stats alone, speed, damage, and reach, are already god tier. You combine that with how hard it is to read that weapon and how annoying it is to fight, you have yourself a broken triple S god tier weapon. All right, the devs have acknowledged that. They've removed it. You'll no longer see it on the Guardian class, and you'll no longer see it on the Mason Man-at-Arms class. However, the animations are still technically in the game. Javelin is still uses the same animations as one-handed spear. However, javelins aren't as annoying to fight in melee combat because first, the javelins don't do as much damage as the spear, they're not as long as the spear, and you're fighting an archer who has less health and less stamina for shenanigans, feints, and craziness, right? So even though the animation set is still technically in the game when you're fighting a javelin player, it's not as bad as you think because as I said, fighting a javelin player is a lot easier to manage than fighting a knight or a man-at-arms who have increased health and more stamina than an archer does. Anyways, one-handed spear has been temporarily removed to rework its animation set. This is another interesting change and pretty much the last thing to really go over with regards to combat and weapon changes. They added a cooldown when you kick someone and then try to attack someone. So going from a kick into an attack. I tested it. It is a little bit slower. So pre-patch, you were essentially able to kick someone and attack them, and it was pretty instant, right? You kick, attack. The moment your kick hit, you're basically winding up your swing. Now, post-patch, there is a slight delay. It's not super uber noticeable. Honestly, if they didn't list it in the notes, might have not even noticed it. They did list it, and I'm looking for it now. And it is very ever so slightly noticeable. So why do they do it? And does it affect your ability to break someone's block and punish them? We'll start off with that. No, it does not. We tested it, and I tested it with a maul. I was still able to successfully break someone's block and land a maul overhead, and they were not able to parry. So I tested it, and it does not impact your ability to punish someone, even with a super slow weapon. Now, what does it do? What is its purpose? I believe this was introduced in order to stop people from basically not being punished for doing a risky kick. It's essentially to make you think more when you're trying to do a kick. You would have people that, especially when paired with fast weapons, you would have people that would kick you even though you were swinging. Imagine I'm swinging my weapon. The enemy comes to kick me. He kicks me, realizes, oh shit, he didn't flinch. My weapon is still going toward him, but because there was no cooldown really between kick and attack, he can instantly throw in an attack, and especially let's say he's using sword stab, right? The stab on the sword is really, really fast, or stab on the short sword is really, really fast. He can essentially get his kick and his swing to hit me before my swing can even hit him, right? Now, post-patch, I'm thinking that's not an actual thing. I haven't had a chance to actually thoroughly test it in my actual gameplay, but in theory, that is essentially what that is trying to fix. Again, does it affect your ability break someone's block and punish them? No. I tested it. We're still able to punish people perfectly fine after breaking their block. What it is going to stop, though, is people kick, attack before people being able to kick and then attack with a quick weapon and make you flinch, even though they should be punished for kicking you, right? While you were swinging, right? So it should at least reduce cases of that. And yeah, as I said, that's pretty much it when it comes to the major gameplay changes for the patch. As I said, the patch was intended to fix a lot of the party issues, and it also introduced a lot of these gameplay changes. As I said, party issues on PC still seem to be a lingering problem. I tried to party up yesterday on patch day, and I still wasn't able to really find people online. My friends weren't appearing online, wasn't able to party up, so that really blows, and it's kind of disappointing when it comes to the patch. But when it comes to the combat changes, I find a lot of these combat changes were nice quality of life changes that just they essentially help you out. There's nothing super game breaking, nothing super different about the game. It's just these nice little features that they've added. That's all when it comes to the combat changes. changes. There's a whole bunch of other changes in here, but as I said, we're not really going to go over it. Everything is pretty much self-explanatory. So yeah, guys, that is essentially an overview of patch 2.0.1, the first patch of Chivalry Medieval, or Chivalry 2. It's not Chivalry Medieval Warfare 2. It's Chivalry 2. That is the first patch of Chivalry 2. Yeah, I think this is actually a good idea. Someone requested this, wanted me to do this type of video in my Discord, and as I would love to get a more professional video, I think I'm just going to upload this unedited. That way it's out there and you guys can see it and watch over it whenever you want. But yeah, for now, that is the patch. Those are the main gameplay changes. If you have questions, you can ask in the comment section below. I will try to respond to you, or you can join my Discord. I'll put a link in the description. And as I said, the moment that these patch notes are live on the internet, I will put that in the description as well, because the only place I can find these updated patch notes are in the game, right? So they're actually just in the game in the news section. You go to the news section, you can find these notes. But yeah, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Hopefully I was able to give you some better insight on how the patch, you know, what it did, what it changed, and what this means for you in game. So if you liked it, leave a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, leave a thumbs down and tell me what I did wrong. Other than that, if you got questions, as I said, leave it in the comments. And if you like the channel and like the content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me, guys. But yeah, thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.